The steel door slams open at exactly 3:38 in the morning, and the woman who stumbles through it looks like she has crawled from a grave. Mia Voss is 27 years old, but the face turned toward the room is decades older, left side swollen to the size of a grapefruit, purple blooming into black, blood-dried and fresh, both running from her split lip down her chin. Her threadbare peacoat, the one she has worn for 4 winters, hangs open and soaked through. The January wind has frozen the melting snow against her dark hair, and her breath comes in shallow gasps like a wounded animal learning to breathe through broken ribs. The underground poker room does not stop. Does not pause. The cigar smoke hanging thick in the air continues to curl toward the crystal chandelier. The stacks of cash, hundreds of thousands of dollars arranged in neat piles like children's blocks, sit untouched on the green felt tables. The brass lamps glow yellow gold over every card, every chip, every man in a black suit positioned at the corners and doors and windows. This is not a place where women collapse. This is not a place where the broken stumble in from the snow. But then she falls. Her knees buckle like the bones have dissolved, and she catches herself against the doorframe, her palm smearing blood across the painted wood. The room temperature drops. Not the actual temperature. Something in the air itself turns sharp and dangerous. Nicholas Castellano sits at the center table, and he does not move. He is 38 years old, with a kind of presence that makes men lower their eyes. His suit is charcoal gray, tailored so precisely it costs more than Mia Voss made in an entire year of double shifts and stolen tips. His white shirt is open at the collar, showing the dark chest beneath. His knuckles rest on a pile of chips worth $180,000, an amount of money that might as well be the distance to the moon for someone like her. But the scar running from his left eye to his cheekbone catches the lamplight, and the way he sits tells you he has hurt people and will hurt them again without hesitation. His dark eyes are focused on the hand he is playing, on the 3 men across from him who sweat under his attention. Vinnie moves first. He is the larger lieutenant, shoulders like a battering ram, and he steps toward the collapsed woman with his hand already reaching for her arm to remove her from the room. Pietro follows, faster but smaller, with a kind of precision that comes from knowing exactly how to hurt someone. Nicholas raises one hand. That is all. One hand, palm open, fingers barely moving. Both men stop as if they have hit a wall. The woman at the doorframe is trying to speak. Her voice comes out as a whisper wrapped in broken glass. Emma. Emma needs help. Please. Emma. The room is so quiet you can hear the tick of the clock on the wall. 53 seconds pass. Then 60. The cigar smoke drifts in lazy spirals. No one breathes loudly. No one moves. Nicholas's attention shifts from the cards in his hand to the woman on the floor. His eyes move over her like a general surveying a battlefield. Swollen face. Blood. The threadbare coat that smells like winter and desperation. And then, a small object falls from her pocket. It hits the hardwood floor and rolls across the polished surface until it stops near the edge of the nearest green felt table. A child's shoe. Pink. Soft. Size 4. The kind of first shoe a mother keeps forever because it is too small to throw away, too precious to lose. Nicholas stands. The chair scrapes backward. His chips remain on the table, untouched. Vinnie and Pietro exchange a look that has no name. The shoe is in Nicholas's hand now, and he is turning it over in his scarred fingers. The inside is worn soft. The sole is scuffed. And written inside in faded blue marker, the letters uneven and small, is a name. Emma Castellano. The 3 words hang in the air like a bullet that has already been fired. Emma Castellano disappeared from the state shelter 8 months ago. She was 7 years old. She was paralyzed from the waist down. She was the daughter of a man who had moved heaven and earth looking for her, who had interrogated 100 people, who had offered $50,000 to anyone who could tell him where she had gone. The police did nothing. The state did nothing. The system swallowed her whole and spat out paperwork that meant nothing. 8 months of silence. 8 months of a father knowing that somewhere in this city, his child was either dead or suffering or both. Nicholas looks at the woman on the floor. His voice comes out quiet and deadly, like venom delivered in a whisper. Get her up. Now. Vinnie and Pietro move together. They lift Mia Voss with the kind of gentleness that surprises her, and she cannot fight them because her body is already giving out. Her vision is narrowing. The room spins. The last thing she sees before the darkness takes her is the man holding her daughter's shoe, the scar on his face catching the lamplight, his eyes the color of a storm sky the moment before the rain comes. She does not know who this man is. She does not know that the paralyzed child she has kept alive for 8 months, the girl she has fed with money she stole from her own mouth, the girl she has protected from 3 different state agencies and one violent man who claimed she belonged to him, belongs to the most dangerous person in the entire city. She does not know that in the underground rooms of this building, this man decides who lives and who dies. That his word carries the weight of law in places where the real law has abandoned everyone. That he can make people disappear in ways that leave no trace, no body, no evidence. That he has already begun looking for her because his daughter whispered a name in the darkness. The name was Mia. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, Douglas Hale sits in a leather chair in his apartment on the 19th floor. He is 51 years old, with the kind of face that attracts money but not loyalty. His eyes are small and cold, like ice chips dropped into a skull. His hands are pale and soft, hands that have never worked, only taken. He is drinking coffee that costs $70 a pound, and he is thinking about the woman he beat 2 hours ago. The one who owes him $35,000. The one who has $5 in her pocket and nowhere left to run. She will find the money. She will find it, or the pain will teach her how. Douglas Hale does not know that the woman he has been hunting is bleeding on the floor of the most dangerous man in San Francisco. He does not know that her daughter, the little girl he has searched for like a vulture searching for carrion, is alive because of the person he has made his personal project to destroy. He does not know that everything is about to change. The door to the underground poker room opens again, and a man in a grey suit enters and whispers something in Nicholas Castellano's ear. Nicholas nods once. His hand is still holding the pink shoe. His eyes are still the color of a coming storm. Find out who she is, he says, his voice like thunder moving across a distant sky. Find out everything. Where she lives. Who she works for. Why she knows my daughter's name. And find her daughter. Find Emma. And bring me anyone who has ever hurt that child. Vinnie and Pietro understand. They have worked for him for 15 years, and in 15 years they have learned to read the moment when a man decides that mercy is finished and only justice remains. This is that moment. This is the moment when the rules change. This is the moment when someone is going to pay a price that will destroy them completely. Mia Voss lies on a couch in a back room, unconscious and bleeding, holding the last thing of value she owns, a piece of paper with an address scrawled in pencil. An address where she has hidden the only person in the world who matters to her. A secret she would die protecting. But she does not know that a man is coming who will tear this city apart to find that address. She does not know that the darkness she has been running from for so many years is about to face something darker and more powerful and infinitely more dangerous than anything Douglas Hale could ever be. She does not know that her life, which was ending 3 hours ago, is about to be reborn in ways she cannot imagine. Before we continue deeper into what is about to unfold, if this story is hitting your heart, drop a like. Share it with someone you love who needs to know that even the darkest places contain people capable of extraordinary grace. Subscribe now so you do not miss what happens when a crime lord discovers that the woman bleeding on his floor holds the key to everything he has been searching for. We will be right back. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us understand how a poor caretaker became the only person standing between a child and the monsters hunting her. Let us see the moment before everything changed. Let us see what brought Mia Voss to the threshold of that steel door, bleeding and desperate and holding a dead secret in her hands. This is where it started. This is the story of how one small act of courage created a debt that would reshape the entire world. 2 weeks before the blood on the floor, before the steel doors of that underground room, before everything collapsed into darkness, Mia Voss stood in the supply closet of Mercy Hill's elderly care home and scraped congealed eggs into her mouth. The eggs had come from Mrs. Chen's breakfast tray at 7:15 a.m. Mrs. Chen would not eat them. Mrs. Chen rarely ate anything anymore. Her body was forgetting how to want food, forgetting how to want much of anything at all. But the eggs were still warm at 7:15, still soft enough to swallow without chewing, and Mia could not afford to waste them. She stood between industrial shelves stacked with bleach bottles and adult diapers, using a plastic spoon she had stolen from the cafeteria, eating in the dark so no one would see. This was her breakfast. This was her lunch. This would be enough. Outside, San Francisco screamed with the morning. Car horns, delivery trucks backing up, someone's music bleeding through open windows 3 blocks away. Inside the supply closet, there was only the sound of Mia's own breathing and the plastic spoon scraping porcelain. She had been working at Mercy Hills for 4 years. 6 days a week. 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. $14.50 an hour. Before taxes, that was $870 a week. After taxes, it was $612. Every single dollar went to Oregon. Every dollar went to a woman named Catherine Voss, who sat in a dialysis chair 3 times a week at $800 a session, blood pumping out of her arm through a machine, getting filtered, getting cleaned, getting returned to a body that was slowly learning to fail. $2,400 a month just to keep her mother alive. That was 4 months of Mia's paychecks. That was everything. That left nothing. That left her with a studio apartment in the Tenderloin that cost $1,200 a month, electricity that cost $130, a phone that cost $49, a bus pass that cost $81. That left her with nothing. That left her eating eggs from other people's breakfast trays in supply closets at 7:15 in the morning. The eggs were gone. She closed her eyes. She would not eat again until tonight, when the kitchen staff put out the dinner scraps. There would be bread. There would be something. There always was. Mercy Hills was a monument to slow endings. A building of 17 floors stacked with people whose bodies were forgetting how to continue. The paint in the hallways was a color that had no name, a beige that suggested surrender. The fluorescent lights hummed a constant note that made everyone who worked here develop a low-level headache by noon. Mia had stopped noticing the headache 3 years ago. Pain had to be continuous to register. Pain that was always there became invisible. Mrs. Chen was in room 1247. She was 93 years old. She had raised 4 children. She had run a restaurant in Chinatown for 42 years before her hands started shaking. She had sent 2 children to college. She had not spoken a complete sentence in 8 months. She spent most hours staring at a television that played cooking shows, her eyes fixed on recipes she would never make again. Mia changed her sheets at 8:30. The smell was ammonia and something older, something that seemed to come from inside the body itself. She had learned not to breathe through her nose. She had learned to make her hands move fast and her mind move slow. She talked to Mrs. Chen while she worked. The talking did not matter. Mrs. Chen did not answer. But Mia talked anyway because the alternative was silence, and silence in a room with a dying person felt like a betrayal. "Your daughter called yesterday," Mia said, fitting a new bottom sheet under Mrs. Chen's body. The woman weighed almost nothing. Moving her was like repositioning a bundle of cloth. "The one in Seattle. She said the snow came early this year. She said she sent you a card. I saw it by your window." Mrs. Chen's eyes did not move. The television showed a woman chopping ginger with a knife. The knife moved so fast it looked like magic. "My mother loves the snow," Mia continued. "She grew up in Portland. She used to tell me that snow was what heaven looked like. That when you died into snow." Mia pulled the sheet up to Mrs. Chen's chin. "I do not think I believe that anymore." By noon, Mia had changed 7 beds, given 8 baths, distributed medications to 12 residents, cleaned 3 rooms where people had stopped caring about dignity, and held the hand of a man named Robert who was trying very hard to die. Robert was 81 years old. He had been trying to die for 3 months. His body was not cooperating. His heart kept beating even though his mind had left the building weeks ago. She sat with him because there was no one else to sit with him, and she read to him from a magazine someone had left in the common room. He did not hear her. But she read anyway. At 2 o'clock, there was a moment of stillness. Mia sat in the break room with her phone, transferring money to her mother's account. She had $1,063 in her bank account. This would be the payment for next week's dialysis, $1,000. This would leave her with $63. This would need to cover bus fare, groceries, phone bill, and everything else for 5 days. She did the math without thinking. $63 divided by 5 was $12.6 a day. That was breakfast if she bought the cheapest oatmeal at the discount grocery store. That was one meal. That was all. She hit send. The transfer went through. $1,000 left her account like water draining from a sinking ship. By evening, as the light turned grey outside the windows and the building began its transition into the long night hours, Mia had developed a headache behind her left eye. She had eaten the dinner scraps at 6 o'clock. There had been rice and something that might have been chicken and a piece of bread. She had eaten it standing up in the kitchen while no one was looking. The fullness had lasted 20 minutes. At 8 o'clock, she was changing the sheets on Robert's bed. His breathing had changed. It came in waves now, long spaces between one breath and the next, as if his lungs were debating whether to continue. She worked around him quietly, as if silence could let him rest. The night security guard, a man named Marcus who had worked here longer than anyone, came and stood in the doorway. His daughter called, Marcus said. From Arizona. She is coming next week. To say goodbye. Mia asked. Maybe. Or to wait. Mia finished the sheet. She moved to the pillows. She made the space around Robert as gentle as possible, as if softness could convince him to stay a little longer. My mother is sick too, Marcus said. In Memphis. I call her every Sunday. She does not remember me anymore. Sometimes I call and she cries because there is a stranger on the phone. I am sorry, Mia said, and she meant it with a depth that surprised her. We do what we can, Marcus said. It is not enough. It is never enough. But we do it anyway. At 9:55, near the end of her shift, Mia was in the hallway restocking the supply cart when her phone buzzed. The message was from an unknown number. She opened it. The text said only, I know where you live. Her body went still. Her hands kept moving, but her body had stopped breathing. The second message came 30 seconds later, you owe me $35,000. You have 3 days. The third message, after 3 days, I am going to take what belongs to me. The fourth message, the girl. Emma. I know about the girl. Mia's hand was shaking. She put the phone down on the supply cart. She picked it up again. She read the messages 7 times to make sure they were real. They were real. The number was blocked. But she knew who had sent them. She had always known this moment was coming. She had known it the way you know a storm is coming even though the sky is still clear because the air itself has changed. She clocked out at 10:07 p.m. She took the bus home. She sat by the window and watched the city pass, all those lit windows, all those people inside warm rooms, and she did not feel like she was part of any of it. She felt like she was watching from a distance, from outside the glass, from a place where the rules were different. Her studio apartment was at the end of a hallway that smelled like cooking and sadness and broken dreams. The walls were so thin she could hear the neighbors' conversations through them. She could hear a couple arguing in Spanish about money. She could hear someone playing music so quiet it was almost not music. She could hear the city breathing around her like a living thing. She locked the door. She locked it 3 times, using every lock that was there. Then she sat on her bed, which was also her couch, which was also her desk, and she opened her wallet. There were 5 $1 bills inside. Crumpled. Worn. The corners soft from handling. $5. This was all she had in the world. Everything else was spoken for. Everything else was gone. The $5 was the only thing between her and nothing. The $5 was the last boundary between her and the absolute dark. She sat very still and looked at those 5 bills for a long time. She did not cry. She had learned years ago that crying was a luxury reserved for people who had time to recover from it. Outside, the November wind moved through the city like something with teeth, like something hunting, like something that had been looking for her for a very long time and had finally caught the scent. The November wind tore through the city like a blade wrapped in ice, and Nicholas Castellano stood motionless before the wall of monitors, watching the poker room 14 stories below. 53 security feeds glowed in the darkness of his office. Surveillance cameras in parking garages, hotel hallways, street corners, and rooftops all feeding information into the machine of his control. But his eyes fixed on only one monitor. The entrance. The snow fell so thick now it erased the sidewalk. The clock on the wall showed 3:06 in the morning. A woman collapsed near the green felt tables at 3:51. Bleeding. Broken. Her coat soaked through with crimson that looked almost black under the neon glow. Her face swollen on one side, her left eye already closing. Security moved toward her but stopped when they saw something in Nicholas's face. He descended the stairs himself. 14 flights. His footsteps echoed off marble that cost more than most people earned in years. Cashmere coat draped across his shoulders, dark hair combed back from a face carved by decades of calculated violence. His men parted without a word. She was trying to crawl. "Help me," she whispered. Her voice trembled like a candle in the wind. "Please help me." Nicholas knelt beside her. In 15 years, Vinnie had never seen him kneel beside anyone. Pietro, standing near the dealer station, looked away out of respect. Nicholas's hand was enormous beside her shoulder. He did not touch her. "Not yet." "Your name," he said. His voice landed soft but each word carried weight, like someone setting down stones. "Mia." She gasped the word. "Mia Voss. I need help. I need someone to call." "Who did this to you?" "Please, I can't," she coughed and tasted blood. "I just need to disappear. I have someone depending on me. A little girl." "She's?" Nicholas turned to his men. "Get Dr. Reyes. Private room upstairs. And call security footage from the alley." He lifted her carefully, his movements precise and practiced, and she felt the terrible strength in his arms. She had lived 8 years of violence and knew when she was in the presence of something far worse and infinitely more dangerous. But there was no cruelty in how he held her. There was only purpose. He carried her past the poker tables where men in suits froze mid-hand, watching something they had never witnessed. The boss. Carrying a broken woman like she was made of something precious. The office upstairs smelled like leather and money and old decisions. He laid her on a couch that was worth more than her entire apartment building. Within 12 minutes, a doctor arrived, a woman with grey hair pulled tight and blood already under her fingernails from her previous call. She worked without speaking, cleaning wounds with competent efficiency. 2 cracked ribs. Lacerations across her back in patterns that meant repeated strikes. A break in her right wrist, old, never properly set. Signs of previous injuries at different stages of healing. The doctor's jaw tightened but she said nothing. When she finished, Nicholas dismissed her with a nod. Mia lay on the couch, bandaged now, and the pain became manageable enough to think. The office stretched around her like a cathedral of surveillance. Windows showing the blizzard obscuring the city below. One wall covered entirely in photographs and documents. Missing person posters. Private investigator reports. Hospital records. Red string connecting pins on a map like a madman's obsession. At the center of it all was a photograph of a small girl with dark eyes and a gentle expression. 6 years old, maybe 7. In a wheelchair. Nicholas sat across from her in a wingback chair, and he held something small and pink in his hand. A child's first shoe. Velcro strap. Size 4. The sole barely worn because the child who wore it could not walk. "Where is my daughter?" His voice was quiet. Mia's eyes went wide. "Emma is your 243 days, he continued. Since she disappeared from Bayview Children's Shelter. 243 days of searching. Of spending money that would break your mathematics. Of calling in favors that cost blood. And she was with you." Mia started shaking. "I didn't know. I swear on everything. The shelter said she was abandoned. The paperwork said." "The paperwork said what?" "That she had no living family. That her mother died and her father was unknown. They were going to move her somewhere else. Somewhere that couldn't help her. She was so scared. She wouldn't stop crying. And Mia's voice broke. "I couldn't let her disappear." Nicholas leaned forward. "You kept her. For 8 months. On how much money?" "I work the breakfast shift at Riverside Diner. $14.50 an hour. Tips are maybe another $100 a week if people are generous." "And you fed her? Clothed her? Paid for medication?" "She needs medication for the spasticity. Which costs $420 a month." Mia went silent. He knew everything. "I found a way," she whispered. "I sent less to my mother. I ate less. I borrowed against next month's tips. I found a way." Nicholas set down the pink shoe with extraordinary care, like it was made of glass. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the storm had intensified. The wind screamed against the glass. His reflection showed something breaking behind his eyes, something that happened so rarely his own men wouldn't recognize it. "Why?" His single word echoed. "Why would you destroy yourself for a child who was not yours?" "Because no one did it for me," Mia said. Her voice was barely audible. "And I couldn't let her grow up thinking she wasn't worth saving." The silence that followed could have swallowed the entire building. Vinnie, still standing guard at the door, stopped breathing. In 15 years of service, he had never heard the boss ask a question to which he genuinely did not know the answer. Nicholas turned back to face her. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. And do not leave out a single detail." So Mia told him. She told him about meeting Douglas Hale when she was 19 and stupid and believed that love was supposed to hurt. She told him about the first time he hit her and how he cried afterward and promised it would never happen again. She told him about the second time, and the third, and the 28th. She told him about calling the police 8 times and having them tell her that unless he used a weapon, it was just domestic disagreement. She told him that his cousin Jerry worked dispatch and that every report vanished before it reached paper. 8 years? Nicholas asked. 8 years. And no one helped you? No one. Nicholas walked to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to Mia. She drank it like she had never tasted water before. He poured another. She drank that too. He did not pour a third. At that same hour, in a bar 6 blocks away, Douglas Hale was screaming at his cousin Jerry about a woman who thought she could hide from him. Douglas was 42 and had the soft body of someone who relied on others to do his violence. His face was flushed from whiskey. His wedding ring caught the light. He had worn it through 8 relationships and would wear it through 8 more. "That bitch took $35,000 from me," Douglas slurred. "She thinks she can just disappear? She thinks she's smart? I know where she works. I know where her mother lives. I got 3 days before I'm bringing her in myself." Jerry, a cop 30 pounds overweight and carrying the same wedding ring, laughed. You want me to pick her up? No. I want to do it myself. I want her to remember exactly why she should have stayed. 3 blocks in the opposite direction, in a penthouse apartment in Pacific Heights, Margaret Harrington was on the phone at 4 in the morning. She was 52 and had worked her entire life to maintain the appearance of agelessness. Platinum hair. Skin pulled tight. Eyes that had seen other women destroyed and felt nothing. She wore a silk robe that cost more than Mia earned in 2 months. I don't care about the blizzard, Margaret said to the voice on the other end. I want everyone to know that Mia Voss is a thief. She stole from Douglas. She probably stole from the care home where she worked before that. Spread it everywhere. Country club. Charity boards. The symphony fundraiser. I want her reputation burned to ash before the snow melts. The voice on the other end asked if this was necessary. It is absolutely necessary, Margaret said, and she hung up. Back in the office, Nicholas made a phone call. Marcus, I need $35,000 in cash in 2 hours. And I need Dr. Reyes to clear a schedule for a transplant evaluation today. Full coverage. He hung up without waiting for a response. He turned to Mia. Your mother has been on the dialysis waiting list for 14 months. There are 17 people ahead of her. I can change that. He said this like he was explaining a simple transaction. I can also make sure Douglas Hale never touches you again. I can make sure he forgets your name exists. Mia's eyes filled with tears, but she did not let them fall. She had learned long ago that tears were a luxury for people who had the time to recover from them. Why would you help me? Her voice cracked. I am nobody. I'm just a waitress. I'm nobody. Nicholas sat down across from her. He picked up the pink shoe again, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and absolute, like a man stating facts that could not be disputed. You saved my daughter's life. That makes you everything. He turned his laptop toward her. On the screen was surveillance footage from the hallway of her apartment building. Timestamp 2:15 in the morning. There was Emma in her wheelchair, asleep, a blanket tucked carefully around her shoulders. Her dark eyes closed. Her mouth slightly open. Peaceful in a way she had never been at the shelter. When Nicholas spoke again, his voice cracked for the first time in 15 years. She looks just like her mother. Vinnie and Pietro exchanged a look neither had ever seen on the other's face. Something had shifted in the room. Something fundamental had changed in their boss. The man who built empires on the understanding that sentiment was weakness had just proven he was capable of something far more dangerous than violence. He was capable of love. The apartment was so cold you could see your breath in the dark. Mia's fingers trembled as she turned her key in the lock at 8:53 in the evening, and the door swung open to reveal Douglas Hale standing in her living room like a predator that had been waiting in the shadows for exactly this moment. His body blocked the window. Behind him, Margaret Harrington stood with her arms crossed, that cruel smile spread across her face like a scar that refused to heal. Where's my money? Douglas's voice was not a question. It was a demand wrapped in violence. Mia's heart stopped. I don't have it yet. I told you I need more time. Douglas moved across the room in 3 strides and grabbed her by the throat. His hand closed around her neck like a vice, like a blade, and he slammed her backward against the wall so hard the framed picture of Emma fell and shattered on the floor. Pain exploded across her skull. I don't care what you told me. His breath was hot against her face. Whiskey and cigarettes and something darker. $35,000. By midnight. That was the deal. Mia choked. She couldn't breathe. Black spots bloomed at the edges of her vision. I can't, please, I can't. Margaret stepped forward, her heels clicking against the hardwood like the ticking of a countdown clock. Of course she can't. I told you, Douglas. She spent it all on that crippled brat. Look at her. She's always been a thief. Always been a liar. From the bedroom, a small voice pierced the darkness. Mia? Mia, where are you? Emma. Mia's eyes went wide. She tried to speak, but Douglas's grip tightened. Please, she gasped. Please don't hurt her. I'll get the money. I'll do anything. Anything you want. Douglas released her and she collapsed against the wall, gasping, her hand flying to her throat where his fingers had left deep red marks already darkening into bruises. He looked at his watch, a Rolex worth more than everything she owned. You have until midnight. That's 3 hours and 13 minutes, Mia. 3 hours to find $35,000. And if you don't, Margaret added, her voice dripping with poison, Douglas is going to take Emma to Mercy State. You know what happens to children like her in places like that? They break. They disappear. And then he's coming back for you. Douglas laughed. A sound like breaking glass. And I'm going to make sure you understand what it means to cross someone like me. They left. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Mia heard their footsteps fade down the hallway, heard the elevator doors open and close, heard the silence that followed like the lid of a coffin being sealed. She lay on the floor for a long moment, her body shaking so violently her teeth chattered. Then Emma's voice came again, smaller now, terrified. Mia? I'm scared. Mia forced herself up. Her legs barely held her weight. She walked to Emma's room and found the child sitting up in her wheelchair, tears streaming down her face, her small hands gripping the armrest so hard her knuckles had turned white. It's okay, baby. I'm here. I'm right here. Mia climbed into bed beside the wheelchair and pulled Emma close, but inside her chest, something was breaking. Something fundamental was shattering into pieces that might never fit back together. She pulled out her phone and looked at the screen. 8:48 p.m. She had 3 hours and 13 minutes. She opened her banking app with shaking fingers. Her balance read $5.23. $5.23. That was all. That was everything. She scrolled through her contacts, and there, saved as NC, was Nicholas's number. Her thumb hovered over it. She could call him. One phone call and he would fix this. He could fix anything. But she couldn't do it. She wouldn't drag him into this abyss. She had survived 8 years alone. 8 years of being invisible, of being nobody, of being broken into smaller and smaller pieces. She would survive this too. She walked to the bathroom and locked the door. She stared at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. The bruises on her neck were already blooming into dark purple flowers. Her eyes were hollow, haunted, the eyes of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be safe. The eyes of someone who had run out of places to hide. She opened the medicine cabinet. There it was, the bottle of sleeping pills prescribed after the beating 2 years ago when Douglas had broken 2 of her ribs and she couldn't stop shaking for a week. The label said 60 tablets. Enough. More than enough. She picked up the bottle. The pills rattled inside like tiny deaths, like tiny escapes, like tiny mercies. Her hand unscrewed the cap. She tipped 1 pill into her palm. Then 2. Then 5. Small white circles that promised an end to the pain, to the fear, to the endless cycle of running and hiding and breaking and surviving. She lifted them toward her mouth. And then she heard it. Mia? I'm scared. Please come back. Emma's voice cut through the darkness like a blade wrapped in light. The pills fell from her hand and scattered across the sink, bouncing into the porcelain basin like tiny accusations. Mia gripped the counter so hard her knuckles turned white and she started crying. Not the quiet tears of defeat, but something deeper. Something rawer. Something that came from the place inside her that was still alive, still fighting, still choosing to survive. She whispered to the broken woman in the mirror, not tonight. Not while she needs you. Not while Emma needs you. She flushed the pills. They spiraled down into the darkness of the pipes and disappeared. She looked at her reflection one more time and saw something she hadn't seen in 8 years. She saw a mother. She walked back to Emma's room and climbed into the narrow bed beside the wheelchair. She held the child until her own shaking stopped, until Emma's breathing deepened and slowed, until the fear that had filled the room like poison gas finally began to dissipate. She stayed awake. Watching. Waiting. Protecting. Because that was what mothers did. What Mia did not know was that cameras had been watching all of this. Not cameras controlled by Douglas or Margaret, but cameras that Nicholas had installed weeks ago. Hidden in smoke detectors and picture frames and a decorative mirror above the bookshelf. Because he had sworn, on the memory of his own mother, on the grave of his wife, on the life of his daughter, that no child under his protection would ever be harmed again. He had seen Douglas slam her against the wall. He had heard Margaret's cruel laughter. He had watched Mia collapse on the bathroom floor. He had seen her reach for the pills. And he had watched her choose to stay alive for Emma. At 11:34 in the evening, Nicholas sat in his office on the 42nd floor of the Castellano building, watching the live feed from Mia's apartment. He picked up the phone and made a single call. "Vinnie. Get Pietro. Get 12 men. Full tactical. We move now." The line went dead. By 11:33, Douglas Hale was in his apartment 3 blocks away, pacing back and forth, checking his watch, savoring the moment when midnight would arrive and he could finally destroy the woman who had humiliated him. He didn't hear the black SUVs pull up outside until it was too late. He didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs until they were already breaking down his door. His apartment exploded inward. 12 men in black tactical gear moved through the space like ghosts, efficient and silent and absolute. Douglas ran toward the bedroom. Vinnie caught him in 3 strides and slammed him against the wall so hard the drywall cracked. His face was pressed against the plaster, his body pinned, his freedom erased in a single instant. "Nicholas Castellano sends his regards," Vinnie said, and his voice was so cold it could freeze blood. "No. No, please. I didn't know she was connected to." "You had 8 years to stop," Pietro said, zip-tying his wrists with plastic restraints. "You had 8 years and you didn't stop. That's on you." They dragged Douglas down 4 flights of stairs and threw him into the back of a black SUV where 2 men from the Salvatore family were waiting. The Salvatore family. The organization that had owed Nicholas a blood debt since the day Nicholas had saved the life of their underboss's son. That debt was being collected now. Douglas screamed as the SUV pulled away from the curb and disappeared into the San Francisco night. His screams echoed down the empty streets, faded around a corner, and were swallowed by silence. Douglas Hale was never seen again. At 6:53 in the morning, as the sun began its slow rise over the bay, FBI agents in dark windbreakers knocked on the door of Margaret Harrington's penthouse in Pacific Heights. She answered it in her silk pajamas, her face full of confusion that transformed into absolute terror when they told her why they were there. Wire fraud. Embezzlement from 3 charities. Conspiracy to commit assault. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution would be swift. Cameras flashed as she was led out in handcuffs, her face twisted in rage and fear, her reputation crumbling in real time. News vans lined the street. Society page headlines screamed her name. Former friends refused her calls. By the time the judge set bail at $1 million, she had lost her seat on 3 charitable boards. By the time her mugshot was released, her investment accounts had been frozen. By the time the federal prosecutor announced he would seek the maximum sentence of 40 years, Margaret Harrington had become a ghost. The same kind of ghost she had spent years turning Mia into. She got 40 years. No bail. No mercy. Nicholas watched the news coverage from his office with Mia standing beside him, and Emma asleep in her wheelchair, her small dark head tilted back, peaceful in a way she had never been at the state shelter. The morning light came through the floor-to-ceiling windows and caught in Mia's hair like gold. "It's over," Nicholas said quietly. Mia could barely breathe. "You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to." "Yes. He turned to face her, and there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Something that looked like a man who had finally found something worth more than his empire. I did. No one touches what's mine. And you saved my daughter. That makes you family. Mia started to cry. Not from fear this time. From something else entirely. Outside, the city was waking up. The fog was lifting. And in the space where there had been only darkness, light was beginning to break through. The mansion in Presidio Heights rose against the evening like a monument to everything Mia had never owned. Floor-to-ceiling windows caught the last light, turning the glass into liquid gold. Inside, Nicholas Castellano moved through the halls with purpose, each footstep deliberate on marble that reflected his image back to him like a mirror of his own power. But tonight, something shifted in that reflection. Something softer. He found Mia in the garden therapy room where Emma sat laughing, racing her wheelchair through the space with the pure joy of a child who no longer lived in fear. The physical therapy equipment cost more than Mia's childhood home. The ramps, the widened doorways, the climate-controlled space designed for a small girl's healing, it was an empire built in miniature, built for one person. Emma. She's beautiful when she laughs, Mia whispered, watching from the doorway. Nicholas didn't look at Emma. He looked at Mia. She learned that from you. The sunset painted everything amber. Nicholas took Mia's hand and led her to his office on the third floor, the place where decisions about the city's underworld were made in leather chairs and whispered conversations. But tonight, the office felt different. It felt like confession. "There's something I need to show you," he said, and his voice carried the weight of a man about to reveal a secret that could shatter everything they had built in 3 days. The laptop opened. Surveillance feeds bloomed across the screen like a digital garden of surveillance. Dozens of camera angles. All watching. All recording. Mia's breath caught. She recognized her old apartment immediately. The corner where the radiator clanked. The kitchen table where she counted pennies. The bedroom where Emma slept. "You've been watching us?" Her voice came out tight, almost strangled. "Since the day I found out where Emma was." Nicholas's words fell like stones into still water. "I installed cameras everywhere. Your apartment. The hallways. The street outside. The care home where you work. The shelter entrance. The bus stop you used every morning at 4:36 a.m. Everywhere." Mia stood up. Anger rose in her chest like heat from a furnace. "You had no right. That was my home. My private. I had every right." His voice became steel wrapped in ice. "My daughter was missing for 8 months. When I found out a stranger was caring for her, I needed to know she was safe. More than that. I needed to know why a woman with $5 in her pocket would steal a child from a state shelter and risk federal charges to keep her alive." Mia opened her mouth. Closed it. Nicholas stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled below him, lights beginning to glow as darkness fell. "I watched you feed her from your own plate when you didn't have enough food yourself. I watched you carry her up for flights of broken stairs because the elevator had been broken for 3 months and the landlord didn't care. I watched you sell your mother's necklace, the only thing she left you, to buy Emma a Christmas present from the dollar store." His voice cracked. The crack of a man whose control was breaking into pieces. "I watched you sit on the roof at 2:24 in the morning, holding a bottle of sleeping pills in one hand and Emma's drawing in the other. And I watched you choose to live." The silence that followed was enormous. Mia's eyes flooded with tears. "You saw that? Everything. Every moment. And that's when I knew you weren't a stranger. You were the only person who loved my daughter as much as I do." Nicholas pressed a remote control. A wall panel beside his desk slid open with a whisper of hydraulics, revealing a screen larger than a television set. It displayed a grid of 47 camera feeds. Emma's bedroom in this mansion, showing her asleep with a therapy dog curled against her pillow. The ramp outside the east entrance. The gardens. The kitchen. The hallway leading to Mia's new room. Every corner. Every space. Every secret watched and protected. I will never stop protecting her. Or you. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. These cameras aren't about control. They're about making sure that what happened to me as a child, the beatings my mother couldn't stop, the nights I prayed someone was watching and would save us, never happens to anyone I love again. Mia walked closer to the grid of screens. One feed showed Emma asleep, her small body curled under a white blanket embroidered with stars. Another showed the empty hallway outside Mia's old apartment, now abandoned, the door sealed. Another showed Douglas Hale's apartment, marked with police tape and official warnings, his body never found, swallowed by the city's underworld like it had never existed at all. She reached out and touched the screen showing Emma. The glass was warm. I know it's invasive. I know it's wrong by every law that matters. Nicholas stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body. But I can't lose anyone else. I won't. Mia took his hand. His palm was rough, scarred. A weapon's hand. But it held hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. I understand, she said. She pointed to the feed of Emma sleeping peacefully in this mansion that was fortress and sanctuary combined. As long as those cameras mean she's never alone, never unprotected, never abandoned in the dark again, I don't care if the whole world is watching. Nicholas exhaled. A weight lifted from his shoulders. Something in his chest loosened, a knot tied 15 years ago beginning to unravel. Thank you, he whispered. What neither of them knew in that moment was that Dimitri, Nicholas's technology specialist, had been compiling the footage into something else entirely. A timeline. A chronicle. A love story told in 47 angles of a woman who saved a child with nothing but her own breaking heart and her refusal to quit. Dimitri would show it to Nicholas the next morning. 47 minutes of video. 8 months compressed into the story of a woman who sacrificed everything to protect someone who wasn't hers by law but belonged to her by something far deeper than law. By the time Nicholas finished watching it alone in his office, his face was in his hands. His shoulders shook. Something inside him was crying in a way he hadn't cried since his mother died when he was 9 years old. When Vinnie found him an hour later, the lieutenant's eyes widened with shock. In 15 years, he had never seen the boss break. Never seen his eyes wet with tears. Vinnie withdrew quietly, found Pietro in the hallway, and said only, something changed. Everything changed. 6 months passed. Time moved like water, carrying them all forward into a life that felt impossible but was, impossibly, real. Emma stood in the garden with help from leg braces, her small hands gripping parallel bars while her legs remembered how to support her weight. The physical therapy had restored function that doctors said would never return. Her laugh filled the mansion daily, a sound like bells in a cathedral of concrete and steel. Mia had moved into the estate not as employee or guest but as family. Nicholas had paid off her mother's medical debt, $180,000 that vanished like it had never existed, and flew her mother to San Francisco for a kidney transplant using connections that reached into the highest hospitals in California. The surgery was successful. Her mother sat in the garden now, color returning to her face, watching her daughter and granddaughter with eyes that couldn't stop leaking tears of gratitude. Nicholas and Mia's relationship had grown into something neither expected. Not employer and protected. Not rescuer and rescued. But two people who saw each other's deepest darkness and chose to stay in it anyway, choosing to love what they found there. The sunset painted the garden in shades of amber and rose. Emma played with a therapy dog near the fountain while Nicholas and Mia sat on the stone bench where they had first truly talked about fear. I never thought I'd be here, Mia said quietly. Her hand rested in his like it had always belonged there. Safe. Happy. Loved. Nicholas kissed her forehead. The gesture of a man who had learned tenderness from watching her give everything to a child who wasn't hers. You saved my daughter, he said. You saved me. You saved me first. That night in the blizzard, when you didn't have to. When I was nothing to you. You could have turned away. No. He turned her face toward his. You saved me long before I saved you. You gave me back the only thing that matters. He gestured toward Emma, racing her wheelchair through the garden paths. And you showed me that strength isn't about power or control or fear. It's about choosing to protect someone when you have absolutely nothing left to give. That night, Nicholas led Mia back to his office one final time. The surveillance system hummed quietly, the screens showing their eternal grid of watching. But this time, Nicholas did something he had sworn he never would. He handed her the master control. Full access. Every camera. Every feed. You can turn them off whenever you want. You can delete the recordings. You can shut it all down. He placed the remote in her hands. I'm putting this in your control because I trust you. Because love isn't about watching someone from the shadows. It's about standing beside them in the light. Mia looked at the screens. Emma laughing. The guards patrolling the perimeter. The sun setting over San Francisco in shades of amber and gold. She thought about 8 years of darkness, of being beaten and terrified and alone. She thought about praying every night that someone, anyone, was watching and would save her. She thought about the cameras that recorded her lowest moment. The night she held sleeping pills in one hand and a child's drawing in the other. She thought about the man who saw that moment and chose to save her. She looked at the remote in her hands. Then she set it down on the desk and took Nicholas's hand instead. Keep them running, she said. Not because I need protection anymore. But because I never want Emma to feel alone. I want her to know that someone is always watching over her. Always watching. Always caring. Always choosing her. Nicholas pulled her close. Through the window behind them, the city lights glowed like 1,000 prayers answered at last. Always, he promised. The camera pans across the mansion as night falls completely. Hidden cameras in every room, every corner, every space where Emma plays and laughs and heals. In the garden. In the kitchen. In the hallway where a child who was once invisible now runs free. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to remember that even in the darkest moments, someone might be watching over them with love. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story about redemption and the families we choose. Drop a comment and tell us, would you forgive someone for invading your privacy if it meant they were protecting the ones you love? Thank you for staying with us until the very end.